Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about the decentering of men movement. But first, I want to show you guys a new book that I just got in the mail. It is $40 Million Slaves. It is The Rise, Fall, and Redemption of the Black Athlete. So I did a little bit of research on CTE, which I've heard people talk about now and now and then. And I won't say like I did this research when it was like first groundbreaking and I was the first person to discover it. No. But I did look into CTE, and it was after the Bengals played the Bills, I believe. And I just remember all the journalists like really attacking a particular player. It was T. Higgins after the hit with Damar Hamlin. And I just could not fathom how the journalists were trying to make it seem as though, Higgins did something murderous, right? And he did something that was just like so like violent and just so out there when the entire sport is violent. And so what led me to really start looking into the NFL earlier, I believe it was the year prior, so like 2022, I had actually applied to be a Bengal, which is an NFL cheerleader. And at the time, COVID was like going on. I think this is 2022. I don't think it was 2021. But at the time, COVID was going on. So the money that I sent in for my application was returned back to me. They weren't doing auditions. She said that she was going to follow up with us. And so during that time, I was like, well, let me actually just research and see what it is to actually be a Bengal and like an NFL cheerleader. For me, my sole purpose in becoming an NFL cheerleader was I wanted exposure for my nonprofit, which is a mentorship program for young girls. I thought that would have been a great collaboration. So I was looking to build connections, and I just also was like 23, 24 at the time. And for me, it just was like, I love doing stuff. I love having fun. I love just saying that I've done it, right? So I was really about experiences. I had always wanted to be a cheerleader. In high school, I decided to play soccer, but I was always like really insecure. So I didn't ultimately become a cheerleader. So I was like, well, this is cool. While I have this little spare time, I can just kind of do this thing. It seemed relatively easy to kind of like apply. Didn't really seem like there was going to be too much, but ultimately it didn't work out. So anyway, looked into the NFL, was looking at previous just Black athletes, right? Looking at Black athletes, looking at like history and stuff like that. I did come across this photo, which was crazy because after that hit and after that play with Damar Hamlin, it was removed from the internet. I actually ended up printing it out, but just through shuffling of like documents and stuff like that, I literally lost the article. But it's so crazy because now it only exists in my memory. But it literally was the photo of like one of the first Black football players. And it was just like very racist commentary. And I was just really fascinated by just how, this was a predominant Black sport and it just had such racist historical roots, which we all kind of know, like even if you don't really know, you kind of know, and then it was just crazy because then like following after we hear the story with, I think it's Dallas, right? Jerry Jones and, just all of that. So it's kind of just been like relative, I feel like I check in every now and again. I did go by the Atlantic's Football 100 because I was just on Twitter and someone was talking about how Patrick Mahomes was the boogeyman. And I was really impressed just by KFC because I just feel like they are KC. Is it KFC or KC? I always say KFC. Let me not act like a football fanatic because that's not what this is. But anyway, I just ended up doing a little bit more research because I just was kind of interested in the sport and the dynamic. And so still following up, still learning because I just think it's really cool. I feel like this is probably one of the most influential industries for Black men and for Black players specifically. Well, the NBA too. So let's dial it back. We know how impactful it is like to be a Black athlete. I remember watching the documentary with O.J. Simpson. Because at the time, race relations was like really high. This was kind of like after George Floyd and just, everything. And I just kind of started to just do more research. And obviously I'm still doing this research to this day because it's never ending into African-American history and just like Black men and white women and interracial dating. That was kind of when like it was really popping. I don't know. It was like, I don't know what year that was. I want to say like 2021, 22, 23. it was like such a popular thing to be in an interracial relationship, and people were actually capitalizing off of it, like TikToks, YouTube pages, everything. So anyway, yeah, watch that documentary. He definitely did it, but it was just crazy because I feel like it just says a lot about how in a lot of ways white women and black women share the same experiences, especially when it comes against power and patriarchy. Yeah. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about decentering men and the movement of decentering men. And I'm going to just kind of be talking about some of my experiences. And what I do believe that we have now is like a great epidemic that is kind of like under the radar. I don't feel like it's anything that's been explored or will possibly be explored. I just finished up Salvation by Bell Hooks for this month, last month. And, you know, she just talked about how like heterosexual relationships between black men and black women is completely understudied and under-researched. I'm always encouraging education because I just feel like this is the thing, right? We talk about not being able to tell our stories and all of that. And it's because it's like we're not in the room, right? I think something that I really did love that she emphasized in that book was how Bell Hooks talked about how a lot of these really negative, you know, like storylines and dynamics, or just more so like, just like very negative things, I guess you'll say. And I'll give an example that she heard about like black men and black women and their relational dynamics and how it wasn't true. I really love how she emphasized how, you know, being within PWIs, being within college and collegiate spaces, a lot of these stories were like really warped to fit white supremacist ideals of black love and black relationships. She talked about how, you know, she got to school and this was the first time she had ever heard this, but they told her that she wasn't going to find a black man because black men didn't like educated women. And she was like, that was the first time I had ever heard that. And so I think that that's really interesting because I think that, you know, just seeing how, you know, it's been continuous, right? I mean, we can look at this from every historical document, like during post and prior to civil rights, just how the CIA, the FBI, all of these governmental agencies were looking into, you know, and really crafting narratives and even systems and all these different things to really destroy the black family. So it was interesting to kind of see that. But I mean, to hear that and to just know that it never really did stop. It just kind of infiltrated its way into like collegiate spaces. And so I thought that was really interesting because I know that that's a common one, right? And this is so crazy when you think about it because it's these paradigms that create such dangerous narratives that then become like our beliefs and how we show up with one another in the real world. So just to know that a lot of this stuff wasn't really premising on any truth, but it was just more so premising from, you know, white supremacy and their views and representations of us, which were falsified. So I thought that was really interesting. But I want to talk about something. I know we are going to kind of touch on class consciousness a little bit here. But something that I do believe is kind of like a siloed epidemic right now is the violence against women. And particularly the violence that black men are and well, we'll just say past and present, right? Committing, right? The continuous violence against black women at the hands of black men. And I feel like there is some truth to white supremacy kind of playing a role in this and being an accomplice to these narratives and sustaining these narratives and you know, putting people in positions to act out of these narratives. But then there's also this realism of classism and a lack of education and a lack of socioeconomic positioning that really does create a sense of violence within a lot of black men. So I'll start by sharing my experience because we can just kind of get into this video, but we're going to just take our time. As y'all know, I've just been creating videos, just sharing my thoughts, you know. So that's my air conditioner. But growing up, I didn't feel poor, you know, and I don't feel poor today, but I also realized that I am not where I feel like a lot of people who maybe have, or maybe would be a part of the more upper class would be. And I'm not talking about like upper class in terms of like, you know, just like exorbitant wealth. Like, no, I'm talking about like just, collegiate studies, things like that. I know there's variety and like there's really no marker, but I also am aware of like, where I am and how a lot of my peers do have more like collegiate degrees and they're working in corporate, and it just looks different. I say that to say I think that their experiences are a lot different than my experiences, and I think their outcomes are a lot different as well. So I think depending on where you are, depending on how you grow up, I do think you have a better chance at like avoiding a lot of the riffraff, because at the bottom is very dangerous. And we'll just say top, middle, bottom. Okay. Like middle, bottom is pretty dangerous. Middle is kind of like scarce because it's mostly like, one or the other. But there is really something about the persistent violence that a lot of Black men commit in the lives of women who possess a lower educational and socioeconomic status. Okay. And you hear women talk about this, about like dating dating broke men, dating men without degrees, all these different things. And the first thought is, oh my God, there's some superficialities here, right? But if you listen closely, you'll actually start to find just underneath that, there is a sense of security that comes with that, right? Because when you're dealing with someone who gets their news from the media, who essentially is at this point at the hands of white supremacy, right? That's who's educating them. That's who controls the narrative. They're saying Black women are the problem. Black women are the reason why you don't have this, why you don't have that. It gets really ugly. And I think what's so crazy is like, I feel like these are conversations that are never really had. And I feel like these are dynamics that are never really explored, right? We don't really explore the Black male psyche and why he's so violent towards the women within his community and those that are around him. And we talk about violence, I stress this enough. I can't stress this enough. Violence is not always a matter of physical violence, right? It's emotional violence, it's psychological violence, it's spiritual violence, it's all those different things, right? There's something about a person who's happy with themselves, right? Their accomplishments, where they are in life. And I think what's really unfortunate is because of the Playboy, because of just like the lure and the pull of that, I feel like a lot of men waste a lot of time just chasing skirts instead of actually getting they're handling their business. And so what you have is a man who is, so esteemed in his ability to take down and conquer women and destroy women and all these different things, right? You have a man who's like literally building off the backs of so many women, right? Using women, abusing women, doing whatever it is that he has to do to get to where it is he wants to be at the expense of women. Is that now you have this man who's a grown man, fully grown, right? Almost 40 at this point, right? Might even be 40, right? Well out of their 20s, well out of boyhood, well out of adolescence, well out of the age and the space of grace that we give young adults to like figure it out. And you have this man who has this false sense of confidence. And so what you really have is just this woven thing of insecurity that is just completely like vulnerable and at any moment can explode, but it's wrapped in a perfect bow, right? It's wrapped in a pretty package. You don't even see it coming. You have no idea there's an explosive inside, and it's just like, these are the outcomes. These are the outcomes. Now, I think something that I hear most commonly, and I have never been one to push back harder now than ever, is the rebuttal to everything, right, that I'm saying about Black men and their violence against Black women is Black women need to choose, we love too hard as women, we don't take our time, we don't X, Y, and Z. I want you guys to look at the epidemic of the pool of men who I am describing, who are literally out to take your life, and not in a fleshly sense, right? But I mean literally out to commit some type of violence against you, right? Whether it's to steal your resources, whether it's to literally, build a bridge on your back to get to wherever it is that he's trying to go. Like when we talk about that level of exploitation, that is a lot of men. And this is why I'm saying this is an epidemic, because we're at a point now where there is no control of the paradigm, and it's gotten really bad and it's getting worse, right? The sense of entitlement that comes from these men who spend their entire lives being players, there's no one to really hold them accountable, right? what we do is we revert back to women. And this is why you have women who are excelling. Women aren't just excelling because they're favored in society, right? Black women aren't educated because they have more favorable opportunities. No, that's an old rhetoric. And this is why I say we need to change advocacy, and advocacy needs a new reform, right? We are not fighting for Black men to have equal education and equal opportunity. No, at this point, this is a matter of personal choice, right? That fight has already been won. We're already here, right? It's a for the most part, it's a pretty equal playing field, okay? And so when we revert back and we start to rebuttal and we tell women, you need to choose better, you need to do this, when that now we have decentering men, right? Decentering men is not women saying, hey, I've had one bad experience with a man, I've had two, I've had three. Okay, because we can learn, we can grow. This is saying, hey, I'm noticing the dangers of these men, this silent epidemic, okay? And this is really bad. This is like really bad. And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it, right? Like I said, what are we advocating for, right? I was on TikTok when I posed this question, like, why are men so afraid of protecting women, right? Like, it's not only gay. You don't have to be gay to protect a woman, right? Like, what is this, right? What is this that I'm seeing? And, there was this guy who was commenting like, well, women stay in abusive relationships for however long. And you see, the tension is never on the man. And it's also diverted from the fact that men are also afraid of other men, right? And so I thought it was very interesting, but I also realized that within the Black male psyche, the vast majority of Black males, right? And like I said, the vast majority. And then, we're not going to talk about women because that's not what this video is about. I'm bringing something to light that I think somebody needs to talk about. And that's what I'm going to do in this video. The vast majority of men, like psychologically, are fed a bunch of things that makes them literally unhinged. And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it, right? Like we have grown so far, even just in terms of traditionalism, from men having innate desires to protect and to provide for women. That's not a thing anymore, And what's very evident to me is like only women are bearing the brunt of this, right? Only women are being required to stay in this very like, I don't want to say submissive place in society, but it's like this very much like subordinate place in society that no longer serves them or anybody else, right? Like women had no choice but to go ahead and take care of their kids, their families, do what it is they had to do because we no longer had viable men. Like the numbers before, there was always a gap. Okay, we had incarceration, we even had homosexuality, right? But now the gap has widened. And it's not because of incarceration and homosexuality. It's because of the psychological narratives and things like that are playing on the Black male psyche and that have never been addressed, right? Men oftentimes talk about having a place to heal, but they've never created one, right? Every Black man that I know who has achieved, greater resources, greater influence in his community uses that influence and those resources to lure over others, as the one who has the throne, right? It's never a matter of, hey, let's implement some programs and some resources to actually help Black men and Black boys. That's never the case, right? Bell Hooks also talked about in Salvation how the realism is that Black women are the ones who share their material resources the most, right? Or they use their resources to help other children and, other people in their communities the most, right? And so we start talking about this dynamic of leadership and traditionalism in terms of like the male being the head of the household and, demanding this sense of respect for his strength and the protection that he provides. It no longer exists, right? It's hard as a woman to respect a man who is not courageous, right? It's hard to respect a man who will not do and cannot do the things that you have to do, right? Someone who shies away from the same responsibilities that you have no choice but to take on, right? How can you respect someone in that regard? It's hard to respect someone like that, and you're a woman and this person is bigger and stronger, whatever the case may be, and they're a coward, right? Like it's hard to respect someone like that. And so now what you have is, patriarchy taking over, and we're talking about debunking patriarchy and critiquing patriarchy and things like that. But it's like, it tells men that you deserve respect because you're a man. Of course, generally, yeah, we all deserve respect and kindness. Okay, got it. But I'm talking about this level of respect that is typically given to men who are stand-ups, these men who are honorable, you know what I mean? Men who are trustworthy, you know what I mean? Men who are honest. Like, you know, it's like men are wanting this level of respect, but they're no longer possessing the characteristics that are actually considered valuable or would even be considered noble. You know? And so, yeah, you're going to have breakdown in relationships because people don't realize that we're changing. Things are changing, right? We're never going back. But when we don't take a look at what is really happening, yeah. And so I think to even have the conversations about the educational gap and the earning gap and not look at the various reasons outside of systemic institutional racism and discrimination and things like that actually play a role in this, right? Young boys are socialized to be playboys. They go to school, they smack girls' butts. We're told this is acceptable. This is what boys do. This is okay. It's okay, right? They go to school. It's not about academics. It's about athleticism, right? Every young boy who can't even probably hop 5 feet in the air is like, this is the path. This is the way. I want to be a millionaire, right? That's okay. Every male mentor, role model, coach, teacher then socializes him to believe and to think that this way is exceptionalism. Like this way is exceptional. This is what it is to be a man, right? This is what you're on the right path. You're doing the right thing, right? And we say, oh no, you know, they focus on their studies. They do focus on their studies. They're, you know, the athletes, he's got good grades, whatever the case may be. Yeah, but where's the priority, right? Where's the attention? I always reference Dr. Kunjufu because I just think the teaching is so relevant, okay? And it just needs to be widespread. But he talks about this. He talks about when you walk into a school, you're bombarded with trophies from the athletic department. But when you look at, you know, academically, there's like a small little shelf somewhere in the principal's office hidden away. You don't even know. Right. And then when it's time to start considering things like, oh, I'm not going to get a full scholarship or whatever the case may be. You have these young boys who, you know, have built brotherhood, who have had this, you know, false sense of hope, all these different investments, right? Emotionally, you know, physically, the time, mentally, right? And it's like dreams are shattered. Dreams are shattered. And I mean, I think as a child, I mean, I'm sure that has to have some type of impact. I mean, I don't think it's long lasting implications, but I'm sure it has some type of impact, right? Because now here you are at the finish line and you don't know anything about scholarships. You don't know anything about the possibilities of actually going to school and being in another program that would, you know what I mean, could possibly generate income and further your education. That's not the priority. The priority is here, right? So back to what I was saying. Right? You have even male adults. I know so many in my own personal life who can very clearly point out, oh, the crime, the criminality and things I'm not even referring to, right? The violence within young boys. They're socialized to be criminals and all these different things, and they don't do anything about it. They don't care to go and volunteer or show up at a school and talk to these young men. They don't care. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's a very interesting thing when we start talking about solutions, because what we always seem to come up with is women, right? And then we're like, women aren't respecting men anymore because women are carrying way more responsibility. Women are doing way more, right? With a lot less, you know? And so how can you respect someone like that? How can you respect someone who is fully capable, right? Fully capable and incompetent? Right? Like, it's not okay. The normalization in, you know, ideas and beliefs around young Black boys not being able to sit still in academia and men not really needing to prioritize reading and learning because of whatever else. It's also ridiculous, right? I think that's also embedded in white supremacy, right? That to me sounds like some undergirded beliefs that Black men are uneducated, that they can't read, that something's fundamentally wrong with them. Right? That sounds like something that, like, what are we talking about here? Right? Is there a reason why you're at a certain age in your life and you don't know certain things? I'm not saying you have to just have a bunch of, you know, whiz kid fun facts. No, this may not be your jam. I don't hold you to that standard, but, you know, to not be able to articulate, to not, like, what is that? You know, what is that? It's this fundamental belief that men can't be men without women. It's this fundamental belief that you're incompetent and you're incapable, right? And that then turns out to all this violence and all this craziness because there's no one else to be your punching bag, right? You're not going to go beat up on the police officers. You're going to do that, you know? So it's a silent epidemic, and it's extremely dangerous. And women are at this point in society where, right, you start talking about financial provision, right? Women have always been this way. I don't even want to say this is because this is anything. This is going on since the 70s, 80s, so forth, right? But yeah, women are now at a point where they no longer need men in terms of like financial provision, right? So yeah, women are demanding men to have different skills. And you can't constantly keep saying men are incapable of developing these skills. Are they human or are they not human, right? It's like you listen to the rhetoric coming from males and it's like, men aren't emotional. We can't, but then it's like men are emotional. You see what I'm saying? So it's like a lack of education overall, you know, and no one can really articulate it. Men don't sit online and articulate these things. You know, what they do is they actually quite frankly, more men, they actually hold men to higher standards in terms of like, they don't coddle. They're like, oh, well, whatever, that's just him. You know, that's him and his issues. So, you know, it's interesting to kind of see men interact with one another like that, because I think what that then communicates to society is like, well, why should we have empathy? Right? Why should we be sitting here on the front lines advocating for men's mental health and all these different things when other men don't see it that way? I think it's actually pretty telling. You know, it's pretty telling. So there's a lot of willfulness that's going on here. And it's disguised as helplessness. It's disguised as an inability to, it's your mental health and an inability to really control one's actions. But I think what you really have is self-destruction, right? You know, you live your life and you're chasing after the wrong things, right? I mean, I don't know what it would be like. I mean, but I think if we're talking about human to human, spirit to spirit, you know, I understand everyone has a desire to, you know, have, you know, secretions and releases. But I think that fundamentally that's got to do something to your psyche. I think that's got to do something to, that's got to change you in some way. But that could be wrong. You know, I could be wrong. But I'm saying to live a life of a playboy your entire life, I'm sure that there has to be some consequences to never doing the hard things and never really having any discipline in your life, you know, that you're going to reap what you sow. And so, yeah, what you have is the byproduct of self-destruction. And who's on the cleanup aisle, right? It's like everyone's supposed to be, and it's like, no, right? These are grown adults who are making choices. And it's interesting because, you know, men will willfully go out and destroy their lives, right? They'll live a life lacking of discipline. They'll, you know, whatever. And it's like when women step into relationships with men for a partnership, right? For the pursuit of the patriarchy, for the pursuit of the nuclear family and traditionalism and being all the things that what a woman is supposed to be, it's like, see, you chose wrong. You know, there's no empathy. So I wrote a column about this. I spoke about how men are continuously and constantly expecting empathy that they don't give. But I just think it's time to really take a look at this, right? You've got doctors, you've got psychologists, and even just, I don't know, podcasters talking about the loneliness epidemic and all these different things. Oh, young boys and all this other stuff. But it's like, no, it's because of the violence. It's because of the violence. And I truly believe that, I mean, if you don't have to believe it, but look around, right? Where in society are men held accountable for the violence that they commit against women? Where in society are men held accountable for anything that doesn't necessarily constitute as breaking the law, right? Like anything that's not visibly breaking the law. Where in society are men held accountable for that? You know, they're not held accountable for the destruction of a woman's psychological well-being. Do you know psychologically, that is the thing that you need to function every single day. That is cognitively, that is the thing that you have to use to take care of your children, to get back and forth to work, to communicate with other people, to excel, to acquire more resources so that you can survive and eventually thrive. Like, you need your mental health. Like, that's a real thing. And it should be a crime, but it's not. You know, it's not. So you talking about like partnering with men, and you listen to women and their decentering of men. It's like, yeah, because to be with a man is a huge risk. It's a huge risk. Like you take a huge risk. And there really is no right way to go about doing that. Yeah, you know what I mean? So, you can spend your entire life safety proofing yourself for this, but at the end of the day, you're dealing with people who all they know is the game of manipulation, right? All they know is the game of psychological destruction, right? All they know is the game of, gaslighting and twisting and lying. And all they know is the game of deceit, right? And unless you can get really good at detecting that, then, but I think to ask women to get better at detecting deceit is crazy. So that this is why you have decentering men, because women are tired of the deception. Women are tired of having to figure out what game is this, because this might be a new one. You know what I mean? That's insane. Who wants to constantly live their life in a perpetual state of survival, right? Who wants to constantly live, like, what is that? And it's, oh, well, women invest too much emotionally. And it's interesting, because what I constantly hear as a solution is that women need to find new ways to work around. And I think women have finally got to the point where they've went down every door. They've done all the things. I truly believe you can't therapy it enough. You can't pray it. Like, you can't, there's nothing you can do to control the deception in another person, right? Like, you can never control the deception in another person. I don't care how many books you read. I don't care. Like, you can't, right? You can get good at study, and you can be like Robert Greene, and you can go into this philosophical analysis and just stay in your study all the days of your life and study the craft of manipulation. And you know what I mean? But what kind of life is that? All for the pursuit of a relationship? That's crazy. I think that is very unfair. I think that is very unbalanced. Quite frankly, there's a very unbalanced way to live your life, right? All for the attainment of a relationship. And I don't think that men are understanding the work that women are doing to get into healthy relationships. So, I say fire your coaches, fire your relational coaches, fire, and then here's the thing, right? People will say, well, you're just hurt. No, I think that people don't really want women to be empowered. I don't think people want women to take responsibility for their lives, because in society, women are considered victims, right? So if I was to say, you know what, I'm going to decenter this. I'm going to make different choices with my life. I'm going to choose to spend my life doing something else that, outside of involvement of a romantic partner. That goes against women being victims. It's like, well, what other place did you have in society, right? Like, you're not a mother, you're not all these things, you're not a victim. What do we do with you, right? It's like, and so I think that's why we have such a problem with women decentering men. And that's why we have a problem with women being like, I've got the solution. I'm out of the game. I'm done. I've seen enough. I know enough. You know what I mean? And so yeah, that's why we lure women back in, and we try to, well, at this point, it's not luring, right? At this point, now we're committing violence, right? Because we don't know what to do with women who say, hey, I think I'm done with this, right? I can't read enough. I can't pray enough. I can't study enough. I can't pay for enough therapy sessions. I no longer want to go through the mental gymnastics of trying to attain a partner, right? Of trying to pick the right man, right? Like, I'm done with that, right? There's other things I want to do in my life. I have my own dreams. I have aspirations. I have, that right there, that goes against being the victim, right? Because we need women to be the victims. We need women to be the ones who assuage the guilt for the violence. And we need women to be the ones to, take up the guilt for the violence, right? We need you to be responsible for this, because that way we can continue to do what we do, right? That way we can continue to do what we do, because we know that if women say, I'm not going to be responsible for this, right? I'm walking away. I'm decentering men. I'm living my life. I'm done with this. Then it's like everything that we've ever said was a lie. Then we have to come to the realization that, hey, this is actually a silent epidemic. There are a lot of violent men out here that are unhinged, right? Then we have to look at different solutions. And that right there, we don't want to do that. We want to just live our lives the way we want to live our lives, because we're men in patriarchy, baby. We don't make changes. Okay, we demand things, and it gets done because we're men. That's the privilege of being a man, right? Like, it's this thing that you get just because you're a man. You don't really have to earn anything, right? So long gone are the days where our granddaddies taught men how to be men. I'm about to go because I'm going to make me some lunch. But yeah, and I think too, women decentering men also kind of shows up as like a lost sense of hope for a lot of women, right? I think a lot of women want to be chosen. I think a lot of women who haven't really dated, who haven't really met a lot of guys, who don't really take chances, or, maybe just are a lot more wiser than some of us. And maybe they aren't the ones out here putting themselves on the front lines and, giving men chances, or, and I don't mean like repetitively in abusive relationships, but I'm saying like taking the time to actually get to know someone. Like maybe these are women who've prioritized career or other things, whatever the case may be. It does in a lot of ways signify a loss of hope for them. I think it also signifies a loss of hope for married women as well, right? Because you'll never be able to have the same level of freedom that a single woman has, right? And it's not a bad thing. It's not an either or. It's not a comparative or competitive analysis, right? It's just more so to say these are two different life choices, right? And so what we want is we want to keep women subjected to one little like confined space, because that's where all women can exist, right? All women can be victims to the violence. But when we step out of that, we, say, hey, I'm done with this. I'm not going to be a victim. That goes against everything else. That goes against, fairy tale love, right? Because women need to know, oh my God, there's somebody out there who's going to save me, who's going to rescue me, right? I'm inadequate. I can't take care of myself, or whatever the case may be, right? Like you want that heroism. And to know that it doesn't exist, that is scary for someone who has never been able to achieve or come close to the Disney fantasy. So there's that. And then I think with married women, I think it would probably force, not all, but it would probably force some married women to look at their partners and really assess. And that's scary, right? Because it's new. And you maybe not have been on the other side, right? So there's a lot of things in there, that would actually change if women were to listen to the voices of society, which I think women are doing today. And it's, the choose better, to do better, to love yourself, to go to therapy, the look at your childhood trauma, the heal, the meditate, all these different things, right? Read books. If women were to take those things and say, okay, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I am going to, I've done all the things. It didn't work out. I'm going to do something else now. Then that goes against women being victims, right? Like, then men have to say, oh my God, right? Like, look at my own inadequacies. Look at what I've been doing for the last 10 years. I don't even, I don't even own a book, right? I don't even own, I have no idea how to really interact and socialize with women outside of my savvy street skills and street smarts of manipulation and deception, right? I have no idea how to show up in these spaces. I have no idea how to conduct myself outside of being this very lustful, horny man, So that's where you have it, right? I have to sit with the realism that I've bought into the idea of exceptionalism. I've bought into the idea of athleticism, right? I've bought into the idea that my place in society was to be an entertainer. I've bought into the idea that my place in society was relegated to, comedy and whatever the case may be, right? I've bought into the idea that I can't be a scholar, that I can't pursue that program, that I've bought into the idea that my place in society was industrialism, that mentally, I don't know if I can use my, you know what I mean? Like, let's just really sit and think about what that would mean and what that's gonna soon mean for a lot of men, right? And that's frightening for them too. I would only imagine when your whole source of survival has flown the coop, So yeah, there's potential threat there, right? Because what's unfortunate is because we have, again, the sensationalism of exceptionalism, right? Sensationalized exceptionalism. I always wonder how I'm going to word that. But sensationalized exceptionalism, you've not spent your life building anything. So yeah, you do need a partner to survive. And even when you step out of that and say, hey, I'm not going to depend on a woman. I'm not going to do, you know what I mean? Then what you have is this white supremacist, right? Now you're on another level, right? Where it's like, Black women are this, Black women are that. And now you have this self-hatred, and it's a whole nother dynamic. It's a whole nother level. So I'm going to conclude by saying this. I don't think that money is going to save you, right? In terms of avoiding male violence, right? Picking a man with means. I don't think that's going to save you. Beauty is not going to save you from the violence that men commit in the lives of women. I don't really know if education will, but I say education, because I think it provides a sense of like, personal esteem, accomplishments, and, things like that I think would make for one of the primal needs of human beings on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know what I mean? And yeah, so I don't think that those things are going to protect you, because we see this even in entertainment, right? We see this OJ Simpson, right? We all across the board, right? I don't think this is going to protect you. But I will say that what I'm concluding with is I understand the decentering men, and I hope you do as well. Okay, I hope you do as well. I don't think that this is just a matter of one bad relationship, right? One divorce, no. This is a silent epidemic that is being masked as an inability to reason, right? And it's being masked as mental health, but it's not mental health, right? This is pure evil and violence, literally. And we downplay it and we try to minimize the abuse of men, but no, it's increasing. Men literally have communities where they can go and get ammunition to come into the lives of women and to destroy and to deceive and to take and to rob, kill, and to John 10 and 10, okay? To John 10 and 10, okay? And this is pretty bad. This is dangerous. And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. And so, yeah, I think at this point, women have to choose safety. And so, yeah, peace.